In this video, we are going to cover how to troubleshoot a failed Asset Framework installation. We will discuss a few ways that the installation can fail and what to do when you are unsure for the reason the installation is failing. One common way the installation could fail is if you have the AF SQL script execution checked. If the account you are running does not have SQL permissions, or if you have a network-related issue, you will not be able to proceed in the installation. You may need to uncheck the AF SQL script execution to proceed. If the reason it is failing has to do with security, then we will see an error similar to this one. Looking at the error message, we can see that we do not have sysadmin permission. This could be because you do not have the correct security permission. Depending on your corporate IT policies, you may not be able to get the permission required. If this is the case, you may need to work with your IT or database administrator, also known as your DBA, and let them execute the scripts, or you may have a different account that the scripts need to be run as. In any of these scenarios, uncheck the AF SQL script execution and the validate connection to SQL Server, but make sure that the AF SQL database scripts stay checked. Go ahead and proceed with the installation. Navigate to your $pyhome64 AF directory. Now you will either need to provide your DBA the SQL folder, or if you have an account with permissions, copy this folder to your SQL Server. Now that we are on the SQL Server and have moved the SQL scripts over from the AF server, we can go ahead with running the scripts. Start by going to the Start menu and typing Run. Now that we have the Run command GUI up, type lusrmgr.msc, as this will open the local users and groups. We will need to add two groups. The first one is the AF Servers group, and the second is the AF Query Engines group. Now that the groups are created, we need to add the account running the AF server to the AF Servers group. In this demo, since we are using a machine account, we will be adding the AF Servers node to the group. Now I'm going to open the SQL folder and copy the AF SQL script path. Open a command prompt under a user that has access to SQL. Using command prompt, navigate to the AF SQL path. To see all the switches possible for the scripts, run go.bat space hyphen question mark. In this demo, we will use the basic required flags. Now that the script has completed, we can see that it has completed successfully. Now the AF server installation is complete. If the reason it is failing has to do with your network, then the error message could look like this one. Notice it says failed to open a connection to SQL database and suggests for you to verify the instance name. At this point, we could complete the installation by unchecking the SQL script execution and unchecking the validate connection to SQL. Then provide the SQL scripts to our IT or DBA and have them resolve the issue. However, in this demo, we are going over some of the basic things we can check, which could resolve our issue completely, or it would narrow down our issue for when you need to escalate to your IT or DBA. The first thing to check is the SQL Server connection for typos. If everything is correct, open up PowerShell and run this command. If we are unable to resolve the IP address, the remote address will be left blank. This will indicate either you have typed the computer name wrong or a DNS issue in which you will need to work with your IT to resolve. The next thing to look at is the status of ping succeed. If it is false, then either SQL is not listening on port 1433 or a firewall is blocking the connection. In this case, let's head over to SQL Server. Now that we are on the SQL Server, we will need to make sure that the SQL service and the SQL browser are running in services. Now that we see they are running, open up a command prompt and run the following command. If running the command does not have any listening status results like this, then it's possible the service is not running or configured to run on port 1433. Please refer to Microsoft documentation on how to configure SQL to run on port 1433 or escalate to your IT or DBA. On our example, notice we are listening twice to port 1433. One will be for IPv4 and one will be for IPv6. It is possible that you only have one listening based on your network. Now that we know that the SQL service is running, the SQL Server browser is running, it is listening on port 1433, and we are able to resolve the IP address, then we have narrowed it down to likely being a firewall blocking it. Now it's time to escalate to your IT and have them help with port 1433. Now that our IT has resolved the firewall issue, we can test it once again on the AF server. Open up PowerShell and run the same command as before to test for port 1433. This time we can notice that the TCP test has succeeded. Now we can complete the installation. Another way it can fail is during the actual installation. As you can see here, the installation failed. The GUI gives us a link to both the bundle log and the failed package log. In order to determine why the installation failed, we need to open the failed package log. For all of our installation packages, any fatal errors will have a return value 3. So let's search the log for a return value 3. Now that we have found error value 3, let's just look a few lines up and we can see that it failed for a network-related error when connecting to SQL. Once you have determined the reason of the failed installation, then you'll need to troubleshoot the issue. In our example, the SQL Server was shut down after the installation has already started. If you are unable to determine the reason that the installation failed, please contact our tech support and provide us with the failed package log and let us know what version you are trying to install.